Hello everybody, welcome to the Accessible Garden at Heathcote Community in Freeland, Maryland, USA. My name is Megan Gamero and my faculty mentor is Jane Hayes. A little bit about me, I've always loved nature ever since I was a kid, and so when I found permaculture design and realized I could learn how to do it myself, I jumped at the opportunity. I'd like to use it to help people live in greater harmony with nature. The mission statement for this project is to create and maintain an accessible permaculture garden and outdoor learning space for growing produce and holding permaculture workshops. And the vision statement states, through our hands-on learning opportunities in permaculture gardening, we will empower people to grow their own food using methods that help heal the earth while also growing herbs and other produce for Heathcote to sell. The additional produce being offered, the fact that the garden is accessible, and the workshops will help draw in more visitors and interns, thereby building a more inclusive community at Heathcote. Goals. Heathcote's goals are to grow food and medicinal herbs in an earth-friendly way, create an accessible gardening space, provide a space for outdoor learning, empower people to grow their own food in an earth-friendly way, bring in income by selling produce and having workshops, and help build an inclusive community. Heathcote is located in Freeland, Maryland. We are about 30 miles north of Baltimore and just a few hours from the Atlantic Ocean. We're also just south of the Pennsylvania line. Heathcote is in the mid-Atlantic region of the eastern United States. It is surrounded by farmland and temperate deciduous forest and is in hardiness zone 6B. The accessible garden itself resides in the Valley Cold Sink, nestled between two ridges and surrounded by trees. The winds are low, the shade is increasingly ample, and the rain is plenty, averaging around 45 inches per year. In order to facilitate Heathcote's goals, I want to make much more of this area Zone 1 as much as possible, so that once it's transitioned into Zone 1, it will receive daily tending and increase productivity, helping Heathcote meet its goals of bringing in income by having more produce and herbs to sell. People and pets come from the north, as does the floodwater. Heathcote has a lot of resources already. Before the project even began, they had 4 accessible beds with built-in compost bins, a lot of ample wood, ample rain, persimmon grove. They had a lot going on already, and they have a surplus of water and shade. They're a little deficient in topsoil, compost. We had to order some to put into the beds, and as the trees grow higher around the site, there will be less sun. Also, they could use some benches for sitting. Heathcote gets around 45 inches of rain per year. The water table in the garden area is high at about 3 feet deep. A small stream runs along the western and southern edges of the garden, just beyond the scope of this map, and even cuts to the northeast some as well. Also, the garden sits on a floodplain and may be at least partially covered by floodwaters once or even twice a year. There is some perpetual standing water and or sogginess in the wetlands along the east side of the garden. Water for irrigation is largely unnecessary due to the amount of rainfall. However, there is a hose that can be brought over from a nearby building to the west that's fed by a well, and 2 water barrels by the carriage house, and we can always bring water up from the stream if needed. So here in the center we have the 4 accessible beds and several rows of hugelkulturs. This will help meet Heathcote's goals of having more land under cultivation to create more produce. This will also be the outdoor learning space, And because we are leveling the ground and raising the beds, it will be more accessible for people with different abilities. Adding the cob bench here will also help people have a place to sit while they're learning or rest while they're working. In the lower part of the garden, we're planting a large medicine wheel to grow herbs, and there are already some mounded beds that we can use to also grow medicinal herbs. And then up here in the corner where the floodwater tends to come from, we're considering maybe a berm, to be determined. Flows and relationships. There's a lot going on at Heathcote. In the interest of time, we're going to pass by this slide. Edges and microclimates. So on the left is the riparian forest, and on the right are the wetlands. And in the middle, where the garden area is, there's a persimmon grove, but also a whole lot of grass. So we have wetlands meet grass, and riparian buffer meets grass. The best sun is down the middle, with still actually a fair amount of shade to the north of the yellow house. And then immediately around this carriage house and this yellow house, there's the possible risk of lead contamination in the soil, so we're not planting immediately around the buildings. We do plan on putting assorted annuals in the raised beds here, with probably blueberry bushes back here. Here's the persimmon grove, and to the bottom area here will be medicinal herbs. Social and invisible structures. The accessible garden is supported most closely by its members, interns, and volunteers who work together to grow and sell the produce, teach, learn, and connect. The next circle out includes the CSA members and other customers, like from the farmers market. And finally, in the widest circle is the surrounding community and farther. People from all of the outer circles sometimes travel into the garden, and the life of the garden depends on it reaching out into the greater community. Technology and energy. Heathcote has a solar shower, a gas-powered lawnmower. Due to the small scale of things, we use hand tools for gardening and a power hedge trimmer for larger areas, and people arrive on the site via car. We get energy from the sun. We capture energy with the seed shed or greenhouse for season extension, also cold frames, and the yellow house is wired for electricity. Animal waste and nutrient cycles. Again, in the interest of time, we'll pass by this slide. Implementation Phase 1, Fall 2021 through Summer 2022. 4 raised beds closest to the carriage house, followed by the hugelkultur beds. And installation on this is already well underway. We have the 4 accessible beds installed and are working on the hugelkulturs, thanks to a lot of volunteers and community members working very hard. And as we go, we will discuss and consider potentially filling in pathways with perhaps gravel or permeable pavers. We will continue to observe and evaluate, and we will continue to discuss potential water catchment to divert floodwaters. Implementation Phase 2 will be summer 2022 through 2025, and it's the medicine wheel and the lower part of the garden, as well as planting in the pre-existing mounded beds. We will discuss and consider how this benefits the community before we take action, and we will discuss and decide who will lead the project and who will manage the garden once installed. And then once all of that is planned, we will plan volunteer days and go forth with the remaining implementation. And then the final phase of implementation will be summer 2022 through 2024, and it's the cob bench. We'll install a cob bench near the accessible beds, and this will help meet some of Heathcote's goals by providing a sustainable building workshop or natural building workshop for the community and for anyone who wants to come in and be part of the community for a day or maybe for longer. We will hire a professional designer to design the bench and lead the workshop, and determine who at Heathcote will help with workshop and maintenance, and then plan and hold the workshop, documenting the process for educational purposes. The stakeholder interviews are from myself and from Yasmin. Yasmin would like to make this landscape accessible for people with different abilities so that they can move freely throughout the space without obstructions. She would also like to have demonstration gardens to show people with small spaces how to grow produce and to promote sustainability and education about the environment. My goal was to design and help install an accessible permaculture demonstration garden that fulfills Heathcote's goals for the garden and promotes regenerative living. We've already been over a lot of the observation and assessment, so we'll move on. Maintenance plan. The garden manager will set a weekly schedule and put reminders in their phone, and she will make a yearly calendar to keep track of tasks according to season. And the garden will be maintained by the garden manager and also other community members needing work hours, as well as interns and CSA work traders. And of course, the garden will continue to be observed and evaluated to see what isn't working as we go. And that is the project. For more information about Heathcote community, visit heathcote.org. For more information about the Permaculture Women's Guild, visit permaculturewomen.com. And a special thanks to my mentor, Jane Hayes. You can find her at gardenjane.com. And thank you to all of the interns and community members and volunteers who came out to support our project.